Hey everyone, it's Mrs. Smith. I want to thank you for coming to watch this. I'm going to be reading the Bookwanderers. This is a fantasy novel by Anna James. It's a fantasy about a girl who can wander through books. I'm going to read the back of it just to give you a synopsis of what it's about, and then I'll be reading chapters 1 and 2. Welcome to Pages and Company. Ever since her mother's disappearance, 11-year-old Tilly Pages has found comfort in the stories at Pages and Company, her grandparents' bookshop. But when her favorite characters, Anne of Green Gables and Alice from Wonderland, start showing up at the shop, Tilly's adventures become very real. Not only can she follow Anne and Alice into their books, she discovers she can bookwander into any story she chooses. Tilly's surprising new ability leads her to fun and exciting adventures, but danger may be lurking on the very next page. When new secrets are uncovered, it's up to Tilly to solve the mystery of what happened to her mother all those years ago. From debut author Anna James comes an enchanting story about the magic of books and the power of imagination. All right, so I picked this book up at Barnes & Noble a couple weeks ago. It was sitting on a table, and it was one of their recommended books of the month. So I thought it looked fun, and who doesn't love a good fantasy? Chapter 1, The View from the Gate of a Fairground. Matilda Pages pushed open the door of Pages and Company and breathed in deeply, taking in the familiar scent of just blown out candles, dark chocolate, and of course, books. For a second, she forgot that she was splattered with muddy water and simply relished the week's holiday that stretched out in front of her like the view from the gate of a fairground. But the bubble of calm popped as the damp seeped through her tights, making her shiver, and she marched through the door connecting the bookshop to the row house she lived in with her grandparents. She let the door crash behind her, tossed her school bag on the table, accidentally sending a pile of potatoes flying, and flopped dramatically into a chair. She paused, waiting for her grandmother to react, and when Grandma finally turned, Tilly flung her head theatrically onto her arms on the table. "Happy half-term, Tilly," Grandma said, looking around in confusion. "What on earth is the matter? And why are you taking it out on the potatoes?" Tilly's cheeks, usually fair with a smattering of freckles, blushed a deep raspberry as she sheepishly started picking up the potatoes. "And you're soaking. It's not still raining, is it?" Grandma said, peering out of the kitchen window. She gave her granddaughter's head an affectionate rub as Tilly kneeled to rescue a stray potato that had rolled into the casket. Tilly sighed and leaned against Grandma's legs. "Grace went through a puddle on her bike, and it splashed all over me." "Surely she didn't do it on purpose?" Grandma asked gently. Tilly harumphed in disagreement. "Aren't you two thick as thieves?" Grandma said. "That was before, when we were just little. She has new friends now," Tilly said. "She got onto the netball team and only wants to be with those girls now. She sits with Amara and Poppy every day." "Have I met Amara and Poppy?" Grandma asked. "No, they went to St. Enid's, and they stick together all the time." "Well, why don't you invite some of them round during the holiday?" Grandma suggested. "Get to know each other." "I don't think they'll come," Tilly said uncertainly. "They're always whispering and giggling about something when I try to talk to them." "They might surprise you. You don't know if you don't ask," Grandma said. "Be brave, Matilda. Be brave. Be brave, be curious, be kind," Tilly interrupted. "I know. It's what we always used to tell your mom growing up," Grandma said. "I just think being brave comes more naturally to some people than others," Tilly said. "Often it's the things that don't come naturally to us that are the most important," Grandma said. "Now, why don't you take off that wet uniform and have a shower? I'll make you a hot chocolate to celebrate the start of the holidays." 20 minutes later, Tilly was clean and dry, her dark brown curls considerably less damp, her own clothes carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate covered in whipped cream, one for her and one for her granddad. She pushed the kitchen door open with her back and reversed into the bookshop. Pages and Company was Tilly's favorite place in the world. From outside on the busy North London High Street, it looked like an entirely normal bookshop. But once inside, it didn't quite make sense how everything fit inside its ordinary walls. The shop was made up of 5 floors of corners and cubby holes, sofas and squashy armchairs, and a labyrinth of bookshelves heading off in different directions. A spiral staircase danced up one wall, painted wooden ladders stretched up into difficult-to-reach corners. Tall arched windows made it feel a little like a church when the lights spilled in, the dust motes danced in the air. When it was good weather, the sun pooled on the floor, and the bookshop cat, named Alice for her curious nature, could often be found dozing in the warmest spots. During the summer, the big fireplace behind the till was filled to bursting with fresh flowers, but as it was October, a fire was roaring there. Tilly had never been very far outside London, but she felt like a seasoned traveler within the pages of books. She had raced across the rooftops of Paris, learned to ride a broomstick, and seen the northern lights from the deck of a ship. She had explored wonderlands and secret gardens with girls curious and contrary. She found books that led to long debates with Granddad over crumpets dripping with butter, and discovered stories that she read again and again until they shone far more brightly than the endless tests at school. She found friendships that seemed free of the complicated social rules of school. Tilly sometimes felt like there had been a lesson where friendship had been explained, but she'd been out sick and had never quite been able to catch up. Granddad was behind the till, sorting through books that customers had ordered, matching receipts to titles and stacking them neatly, ready for collection. Tilly deposited the second mug of hot chocolate on the till, managing to avoid spilling most of it. "Happy holidays, Tilly," he said, clinking mugs with her. Granddad drank deeply and pretended, as he always did, that he didn't know he had whipped cream on his top lip. "Got much homework?" "I have to read a book I've never read before." Tilly giggled as she stuck a finger in her whipped cream, thinking of the pile of 5 books she had stacked next to her bed for her holiday reading. "Miss Weber did say that after the holidays, we'd be starting a project about our favorite characters from books, and that if we wanted to get a head start on that, we should think about who ours were. Who would you pick?" "What a question," Granddad said, licking the cream from his lip. "I must admit my gut instinct is pulling me towards Sherlock Holmes, but I'll have to have a proper think and get back to you with my official answer. Now, other than your particularly arduous workload, what else do you have planned for the week? Is Grace coming over?" "I don't know why you and Grandma keep asking me about Grace," Tilly said. "Do we?" Granddad said, surprised. "Well, I thought she was your best friend." "I don't have a best friend," Tilly said firmly. "I've realized there isn't anyone who's best friend material at school." "And what exactly makes someone best friend material?" Granddad asked. "Someone who sticks by you, someone who never gets bored of talking to you, someone who's adventurous and clever and brave and funny," Tilly said, checking her criteria off on her fingers. "Someone like Anne Shirley or Alice from Wonderland. Those are my favorite characters, incidentally." With very few exceptions, Tilly found that she much preferred the company of characters in her books to most of the people she knew in real life. "I'm not sure best friends are a one-size-fits-all sort of situation, Tilly," Granddad said carefully. "Sometimes a person who becomes a friend is the least likely person you'd expect. Friends should bring out the best in you, not be the same as you. I'm sure you're someone's perfect fit." Tilly tried to imagine herself as the perfect fit for a potential best friend, but when she thought about herself too directly, she felt sort of fuzzy around the edges, like a photograph that was blurred. And when she compared herself to the characters she met in books, their ink and paper felt more real than her bones and skin. "And for now, you've always got me," Granddad continued, "if you're in the market for an elderly best friend with whiskers and a bookshop." "Exactly," Tilly said, trying to erase all thoughts of hypothetical best friends from her mind. "I don't need anyone who doesn't live in pages and company." Chapter 2, No One Has Proper Adventures in Real Life. The next morning, Tilly woke up to the sound of rain and falling autumn leaves on her sloped skylight window. Rain meant quiet days in the shop as people stayed inside with only the odd group of bedraggled readers drying out in the cafe area, waiting for gaps in the downpour. She relished the school holidays with the familiar rhythms and rituals of the bookshop, and she savored every moment of her first day of the holidays routine. A chapter of a new book in bed while everything was quiet, getting dressed in anything that wasn't a school uniform, a lazy breakfast of one of Granddad's perfectly boiled eggs with toast soldiers. "So what's the plan for today?" Grandma asked, handing Tilly a mug of milky tea. "Reading mainly," Tilly said. "Do you want to wander down to the woods with me later?" Granddad suggested. Or I need to pop into the florist's and confirm all the flowers for the Wonderland party on Wednesday night. I could do with your eye for color. We've created a monster with this party, I sometimes think. Every year, the customers and publishing folks seem to expect a more extravagant theme. Tilly shrugged. Do you ever wish, she said, ignoring Granddad's question and turning to her grandparents with a serious look on her face, that you had a relatively good friend in mortal peril that you could go and rescue? I can't say that's something I spend much time thinking about, Grandma said, exchanging a look with Granddad across the table. Tilly sighed. I just wish there was something more exciting to do than go to florists, she said. No one has proper adventures in real life. If I didn't want to get myself into hot water, I would say that someone who can't find adventure in the woods is lacking in imagination, Granddad said. You know what I mean. I do, my dear, but it never hurts to keep a weather eye open for adventures, even small ones. But for now, Grandma said, why don't you stick with an adventure in a book? And if the rain ever stops, we can head out for a wander later. Tilly opened the door into the bookshop and went to find Jack, who looked after the snug cafe area that took up a corner of the ground floor. When she reached the mismatched collection of chairs and tables, he was nowhere to be found, so she went to see if there were any cakes she could sample. But just as she reached out for the gooey-looking chocolate brownie, Jack's head popped over the counter. Aha! Caught red-handed, he said. I was just looking, Tilly said sheepishly before registering the wide smile on his face. Why do you have honey on your forehead? She asked. I'm experimenting with pop cakes, he said, holding up an ice cube tray filled with sticky honey. Remember in the Faraway Tree books by Enid Blyton? They eat those cakes that explode with honey when you bite into them. I'm going to freeze the honey so I can bake it into the middle of the cupcakes. At least that's the plan. The honey is proving a little, well, uncooperative. Jack, who was 19 and saving up to go to pastry school in Paris, took his role as a bookshop baker very seriously and was always trying to recreate cakes and bakes from books. Tilly was under strict instructions to tell him whenever she came across a particularly tasty-sounding dish in a book she was reading. She had a suspicion he was using some of the new cookbooks for inspiration as well, as every once in a while she'd had to wipe off a smear of icing from a spine sticking out from a shelf, as though it had been put back in a hurry. Do you want some hot chocolate? Jack offered as he manhandled the ice cube tray into the tiny freezer section of the cafe fridge. I'll bring it up. Tilly nodded and grinned and then headed to her favorite reading corner on the first floor. 10 minutes later, Jack sat down next to her, carefully holding a tray with 2 steaming mugs and 2 brownies on it. If your grandparents notice me giving you brownies so soon after breakfast, just claim it's a very important baking experiment for the party, okay? He nudged her arm. What are you reading? Tilly showed him the book cover, which was blue and glittery. I've just started it. It's about mermaids and pirates in the ocean. It's probably not your kind of thing. Well, actually, Miss Tilly, I'll have you know I have quite a penchant for books about pirates in the ocean, he said. But I like all sorts, really. I can't resist books set in space, especially if they've got something weird going on or a really good twist. And if there's some kind of intelligent robot, even better, especially if it turns out to be evil. I know I should know this by now, but what are your favorites? My 2 favorite books are Anne of Green Gables and Alice in Wonderland, Tilly replied with a great deal of certainty. Anne and Alice are my favorite characters. Why do you like them so much then? She paused. For lots of reasons, but I like them best because they seem real even when I'm not reading about them. What do you mean by real? Jack asked. Tilly contemplated the question. Like, sometimes when I don't know what to do, I think about what Anne would do. Or I find myself wanting to tell Alice about something I learned. And it takes a second before I remember they're not real people I can just go and talk to. Jack smiled. Often characters in books are considerably more consistent than the people around us. All that messy life stuff does rather get in the way. Speaking of, he said, brushing the crumbs off his apron as a tiny, tinny beep sounded through the shop, my pop cakes are calling. Come and try one in a bit. He pushed himself up from the squishy sofa and disappeared down the stairs, leaving Tilly to her book. A little while later, Tilly was interrupted from her adventures under the sea by the sound of her grandma's laughter tumbling down the stairs. Tilly couldn't remember the last time she had heard Grandma laugh like that, or the last time she herself had laughed so hard either. So she tiptoed up the stairs to see what was causing it. She found Grandma tucked in a corner, wiping tears from her eyes as a woman with dark curly hair pinned up on the back of her head waved her hands around animatedly. She seemed quite a lot younger than Grandma and wore a long, old-fashioned looking dress. Tilly crept closer, wanting to hear what Grandma was finding so funny without interrupting the moment. And do you know, he turned to him and said in the most insufferable voice, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me." I tell you, Elsie, I held Charlotte's hand very tightly to stop myself going over and telling him exactly what I thought of his manners, especially when he was so new to town. Of course, my mother will forgive a man that rich almost anything, although this tested even her resolve. No longer able to resist Grandma's giggles, Tilly coughed loudly and rounded the corner only to find Grandma sitting by herself. "Oh, Tilly," she said, still hiccuping a little. "Are you okay, darling?" "Where's that woman gone?" Tilly asked, looking around in confusion, unable to understand how she'd left so quickly and quietly. Grandma's laughter abruptly stopped. "Which woman, darling?" she asked, sitting up straighter. "The woman you were just talking to, of course," Tilly said. "The one with the long dress and the dark hair, the one who made you laugh like that." "Oh, her," Grandma said slowly. "That's Lizzie. She's an old friend. You caught a glimpse of her, did you?" "She was literally just sitting here as I came up the stairs," Tilly said, confused. "Where's she gone?" "She must have slipped past you without you noticing. You know how this place is like a rabbit warren. It's impossible to keep track of everything and everyone. I'm forever losing you in here," Grandma said, even more composed. "Anyway, enough of that. How's your book?" Tilly had the distinct feeling that Grandma wasn't telling her something. "How long have you known Lizzie for?" she asked, ignoring Grandma's question. "Oh, a long time now." "She's not very old, though," Tilly persisted. "No, I suppose she's not, but she's an old soul," Grandma smiled. "She's, well, Tilly, if I tell you the truth, part of the reason I enjoy spending time with her is that she reminds me of your mom very much." "Mom?" Tilly sat down on the now empty chair opposite Grandma, hungry for details and feeling her heart punch against her rib cage. "What reminds you of her? She doesn't really look like her, does she?" "No, not particularly," Grandma said. "It's more how she holds herself, her sense of humor, her way of telling stories. Your mom used to make me laugh in the same way Lizzie does." "Did my mom know her too? Were they friends? How old is Lizzie?" Tilly asked. A little older than she looks," Grandma said. "I first met Lizzie years before your mom left. I need to get her skincare secret, hey?" Tilly was feeling lightheaded with this new information about her mother, whom she'd only known as a baby. Beatrice Pages had left when Tilly was tiny, and Tilly had grown used to not speaking about her to avoid reopening old wounds that seemed to haunt Grandma and Granddad. Sometimes she lost her granddad for days at a time as she asked questions. He was physically there, but barely seemed to notice anything going on around him, ignoring customers and Tilly alike. So when these precious gems of information emerged, Tilly gathered them to her and guarded them fiercely. "Anyway, that's enough chat about old friends," Grandma said, bringing the conversation to a close with a firm nod of her head. "Do you have a moment to come and help me in the stockroom?" Tilly nodded, and Grandma took her hand as they walked down the stairs together, where they were immediately pounced on by a panicked-looking Jack. "I need help," he wailed. "What's wrong?" Grandma asked, as Tilly imagined an array of horrible accidents involving honey or knives or both. "I can't find the vanilla essence," Jack shouted, making two people sitting drinking coffee eye him warily, and Alice, the cat, raised her head in disdain from the cushioned seat she had claimed for the morning. Grandma sighed. "That's all?" Tilly said. "I thought you'd hurt yourself. I thought it was an emergency." Jack looked surprised. "This is an emergency. I need to get the vanilla in the batter now. Do you have any in the kitchen, Elsie, or could you go and ask Mary, Tilly?" Grandma took a deep breath. "Tilly, you go and check the kitchen and see if you can find some in the pantry. I'm going to get back into the stock cupboard." "Don't get honey on my book," Tilly said sternly, putting it behind the counter before heading to the kitchen. There was nothing in the pantry, so Tilly rifled through the kitchen cupboards, but she couldn't find any vanilla essence there either. The cupboards seemed to be full of everything and nothing all at the same time, the result of her granddad's inability to throw anything away in case it proved useful later, however much it looked like junk to Tilly and Grandma. She found one orange sock, several pencils, and the red half of a pack of cards. but no vanilla. And then, tucked away behind a heap of empty shoeboxes, she found a dusty cardboard box wrapped in packing tape. On the top flap, it had B's Books, written in black marker. Tilly felt her heart squeeze and a crackle of something she couldn't identify deep inside her. These were her mom's stories. All right, tune in tomorrow. I'll be reading chapters 3 and 4. Hope you enjoyed.